Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Blackie, and today we're going to be talking about part 3 in the forgotten bushcraft knife. Now this particular knife probably doesn't leap to mind with a lot of you because like I said in the last video, the Buck 110 was the knife in my generation that was just the most iconic. It was the one that was being pulled every time I saw something coming off a belt to do this type of job. Almost always it was a Buck 110. But before my generation, in my grandfather's generation, there was another knife that was used, and that was this knife. Now, this is just a simple belt sheath that I made for it to carry it on the belt and make it easy. That's a Granddaddy Barlow. Now the Barlow knife goes back hundreds of years, and these big knives like this come up in the 1800s. So this knife was like the folding WOODSCRAFT knife of the day. Now it has a good sized blade, and again it's about equal balance from one side to the other, like I've talked about in other videos. It is a slip joint, which means it will fold, so you have to be very careful in using it and not go back against the blade or it might close up. Now these modern ones have a safety catch right there that if it gets bumped, it'll catch there rather than closing on your fingers, or it should, but still. I watched my granddaddy use one of this. It rode in the top of a pair of bib overalls, and that was his bushcraft knife. If we needed to carve a quick thing to stick in the ground, a fork stick to hold a cane pole on a creek bank, it was that knife came out. If there was a lot of jobs that required something to be whittled or carved that was big, not small, because that's what the small pocket knife was for, this knife came out, and this was the knife that was used for that. Now let me give you a quick comparison. This is the classic Mora, and this is the Granddaddy Barlow. You notice they're almost the same size. In fact, in blade length, they lack about that much being the same size, and in the widest part, they're almost the same width apart. So that gives you an idea, but it's got the clip point instead of that clip. But therefore, that gives you an idea. This is obviously a bushcraft knife. This is a folding version. Think of that. Now, some advantages. One, it's very light and very thin. And so for those of you that don't want to be encumbered, this is a very good one for that. Again, it's not a pry bar, but it's got that reinforced bolster on it up there to help keep it solidly in place and not let it pry apart easily when you're using it for carving and stuff like that. It's nowhere near as strong as that Buck 110, but I would expect that in, knife designs that are 100 years apart. I'd kind of expect it. But if you use a little common sense, this will serve well, and I've used this many times in some videos where I've used this to make up something or cut something right quick. Okay? Now, another advantage to it being thin, long, but it's got this taper shape to it, is it fits the hand really well. And you can tell exactly where that edge is by the way it fits in the hand because of this shape here. This keeps the knife from wanting to come out of your hand going forward. For those pull cuts of slicing meat and stuff like that, the pull cut this wide keeps it from sliding out of the hand when your hand gets a little wet or slick or whatever. Another trick that I learned from my granddaddy when using this is whenever I was going to be cutting with it is to put your finger right there and pinch between your finger and your thumb. If the blade goes to tip, you feel it instantly, and it can't easily, even before it gets that lock. There's the lock, and my finger is not in it. I know it's closed, but you'll feel the blade start to go. So if you're doing something that starts to go, you can back off. See, it's got a good spring in it. Now this is a modern one, and this is probably of all the ones the cheapest, because, well, most inexpensive is a better way to put it. I did not realize when I started this series that very first knife I started, which was the Old Timer 2250T, which had been gifted to me a while back, I did not realize that was a $300 and something collectible knife. I would still have done it, but I just did not know it was a collectible knife. Now, the modern, similar design to it, that's still made by Old Timer, is called the Buzzsaw. And if you go look at Smoky Mountain Knife Works and look for the Old Timer Buzzsaw, they're like 28 bucks. They got a saw blade and a folding blade, so check that out if you're interested in that design. Next down was the buck knife, and those run $30, $35, just depends where you get them. $29, $35, it just depends. It can be a little bit more or a little bit less, just depends. This knife is around 20 bucks or 20, 22 bucks. This is a Rough Rider knife. I came upon Rough Rider knives a couple of years ago and have done some videos on them, and I've been very impressed with the quality of them for the price. You know, no, this is not a pry bar, but none of this design ever was. It's a field knife. It's a knife that you needed a bigger blade to do a bigger job than a small pocket knife, and yet was not encumbersome to carry. And for those of you looking for light and easy, this is the way to go. This clip point allows me to choke up and use just that tip for precision. Notice how the handle lays down against the wrist and becomes like an extension of your finger, like you got a long fingernail or something out there for you to do very fine tip work with it. It's got a nice long blade with that little bit of curve on it for the draw cut, for slicing up bacon and meat and stuff like that. It does good for that. This back edge is not 90 degrees, but right here on this section, you notice this, would be very easy to put a 90 degree on there to shave bark with this. Okay? So this design, my grandfather used this. I called it the long knife because he would pull out his case pocket knife that was a razor, a small one that rode in the left pocket, or he'd pull out that junk one in his right pocket that he picked up at the dollar store for $1. You know, at the hardware store or whatever. That was for scraping the rust off of something. That was for whatever. If it could damage a knife, that little bitty junk knife came out. And then this knife rode in the top of them bib overalls when we were hunting and stuff like that for big jobs. I've watched my granddaddy clean deer, coons, all kinds of stuff with this big knife right here. And it's done a good job. As long as you sharpen it, you know what you're doing, you pay attention, it'd be a fine knife. Now, let's make a little quick camp project right quick. For this job, I have gone and taken and sawed off a hook. Now, what this is simply a limb that was coming out like this. This was the main limb, and this is a branch coming off of it. And we're going to make an adjustable trammel. Now, all we got to do is get rid of all this bark off of here. Okay, now that I've taken it and gotten all that bark off of that, I'm going to take advantage of this as a stop to help hold my line. So I'm going to notch under there to help hold it. But first, let's talk about this a little bit, about the geometry. I don't want to put all I'm doing right there is just putting a little notch right there for that line to hook to. Now, since the pot that this is going to hang probably ain't going to weigh any more than just a couple of pounds, there's no sense on putting 550 paracord or something on it, is it? So I'm going to use a thinner bank line for this because it'll do just fine. Now, what we're going to make is a trammel. And what a trammel is just simply an adjustable pot hook that you usually classically hang it on the end of a tripod to adjust it up or down. So I'm going to run off a length of, say, about 6 feet, 6 or 7 feet. Cut that. And the Murphy's Law of every time you go to make a video is the exact moment that the neighbor that ever down the street ever comes out decides to fire up a lawnmower or something. Just Murphy's Law. But you know, we're going to deal with it. I live out in the country, but you know, I got neighbors down the street and back behind me and everything else. And I come out trying to do videos. Could just do something quick because I got a doctor's appointment I got to go to. And invariably. Anyway. Alright, so we got the hook. Remember, I want my line to be on the inside here so it hooks under. If I put it to the outside, it wants to hook out. I want it to hook under so when I set the pot up on there, it wants to stay on the pot and not want to tip away. Okay, so I want my knot on this side right here. So what I'm going to do is I folded my line in half. I'm going to come around and I'm going to go back through it. Just reach through, pull both lines out just like that. I'm going to cinch it down good and tight so it bites down in there. And now I'm going to hang it and see where my hook naturally hangs. I want this hook to be straight, not cocked off at the side, relatively straight, like that. Now once I do that, I'm going to take both lines, roll it and form a loop, put that loop back over, and pull it again, sawing it back and forth. And that will lock that in place. So this knot won't come loose now and fall off, okay? And it'll stay in place. Now let me adjust and I'll show you how to tie this. Okay, I'm going to hook my hook. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down a section. I'm going to come down a section and I'm going to take and go around my finger and go back through to make a simple slip knot. But before I pull it tight, I'm going to grab one of them and I'm going to pull it tight before the other one. Just like that. So you pull on one side. Now I pull it down tight. Making sure to pull both my lines just like that. And that makes it where it's going to have one side off to the other. Now I'm going to come down here. Here's my first knot. Here's where I'm going to put my second one. I want this adjustment right here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one line and I'm going to pull it out slack like that. Okay, see, one line slack, one line tight, right there. Now I'm going to pinch it. I'm going to go around my finger and I'm going to go through that loop I just created. Just like that. Pull it down tight. That makes it where that one loop stands out to that side, see? Right there. Now, I'm going to hook it where I can go again. I'm going to go again. I'm going to come down here a section. And this time I'm going to pull on the opposite side. I'm going to pull it up so it's slack like that. Grip it and go around my fingertip. And pull it back through, just like that. And that makes that big loop to that side. Then, rolling up my slack, put it back up there. I'm going to come down and do another one, being on the opposite side of the side I just did it on. So I'll take the opposite side right there. I'll pull it up so it's slack, pinch the two ends together, go around my finger, and go through. Pulling it tight, making it offset. Now what that's created is whenever I hang this up, and let me put it up against me so you can see it better. See how this loop is right here? And the loop above it right here? And the loop below it right here? That means that when I hang my pot onto it, and here's the end of my tripod sticking out, I come up and I simply hook onto the line. To move it, all I got to do is just grab the line, pick up, and I can move to the next line to drop it down. Next line to drop it down, or come back to go up. I'll show you a better overall picture of that in just a sec. Here's my pot. I'm going to hook the pot right like that. And right here is my hang point. So I'm going to hook on that first loop, just like that. If I want to go lower, I pick it up and I go to the next loop. Since the lines are offset, it's very easy for me to bullseye that next one without having to fiddle with it and try to reach out there and separate it. So I can drop the distance down just by doing that, or come up just by doing that. Really simple. And because of that, as you can see, these lines stay off, sticking off. Every time you look, there's a wrinkle like that. It's easy enough for me to spare to hang, where these two lines ain't just hanging tight together. Like, for example, here's the two lines. You'd have to sit there and reach out and by hand take your fingernail and divide it. By doing it this way, there's always this little loop right here that I can hook onto and therefore open it up. Then all I got to do when I'm going to transport this is wrap the line around the end. Simple as that. It makes it compact. I can slide this down in the pack or put it in my bush pot if it's small enough. See what I'm saying? And have a portable hook where all I got to do is use an existing limb, something hanging out, or all I got to do is put together a quick tripod and I've got a quick made hook to hang my pot on. Very quick and simple. The Granddaddy Barlow is just a simple, inexpensive folding bush knife right there. And for those of you that are thinking about getting one of these knives that I've been talking about, if you're going to be doing a lot of serious carving, a lot of bearing down, a lot of work, I recommend the Buck 110. If you're wanting something thin and light and easy to carry and not very expensive, go look on Smoky Mountain Knife Works and look up Rough Rider, as in Teddy Roosevelt's Rough Riders cavalry unit, volunteer cavalry unit of the Spanish-American War, and look up Granddaddy Barlow, and these will pop up. They are not expensive, but they have decent steel in them. They're very well made, and they do a really good job. Hope you've enjoyed this video, guys. If you have, please hit that like, share, and subscribe button before you go. Until next time, guys, I'm Blackie wishing you safe journeys. Have a great day, guys.